Good afternoon. Welcome to this special edition of Encounter. Glad you're listening today. Well, we're going to be talking about something that's coming up. It's called Christmas, and specifically we're going to be talking about Operation Christmas Child. That's the shoebox thing that Samaritan's Purse does every year. And I have had the real privilege, and I do count it a privilege the last couple of years to talk with various folks from Operation Christmas Child, and that's what we're going to be doing today. So you can find out about what it does, but we're going to hear from a guy he's not a young man anymore. He's kind of young relative to me, but when he was a 9-year-old boy in Ukraine, he received a shoebox, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So sitting across from me is Vladimir Prokhnevskiy. Did I get it right?
Perfect.
Very good. And also Allison Guybeson. Allison is with Samaritan's Purse as a volunteer, and glad you all are here. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
You know, this is one of my favorite times of the year, and I've, as I said, I've had the opportunity to talk to a couple of different folks from different countries who received shoeboxes when they were very young, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So, Vladimir, tell us a little bit about your story. Give us a little bit of background, then I'll start asking you some questions.
Well, I come from a family of 9 kids. My father was an underground pastor in Kiev, Ukraine. He risked his life preaching the gospel in the streets of Kiev at the time when it wasn't popular or allowed. And because we lived in the Soviet Union, where everything was owned by the state, my father was heavily persecuted, and every time he was captured and written up, it greatly affected his pay even more. Because sometimes people wonder, like, why were you guys so poor? Well, the reason we were poor because the state did not want Christians to advance, and so every time he was captured, it affected his pay even more. So it got to the point to where we had to take turns to go outside to play because we couldn't afford enough shoes for everybody. So I would put my shoes on, go outside, play with my friends, come back, take my shoes off, give it to the next person in line. We also had to share our toothbrushes. That was a humbling experience. So same thing, I would brush my teeth, give my toothbrush to my mom when I'm finished, and she would wash it with hot water and soap, and then she would give it to the next person in line. And we didn't have access to a lot of toys either, especially new toys, but it didn't stop us from being creative. We made our own toys. We would go outside. We found Coca-Cola caps. I remember we made the yo-yos out of Coca-Cola caps, which was really cool. We played with our shoes, pretending they were cars, boats, airplanes. We did a lot of cool things as kids. And as for food, we pretty much grew up on rice and potatoes, which I often jokingly say that we were vegetarians before it was even cool or popular.
Yeah.
And we grew up in this old Soviet apartment, 3-bedroom apartment, barely any heating, cooling. We didn't have a washer and a dryer, so my mom had to do all the laundry by hand, and mom would often stay up all night, and she would make socks and underwear for us out of just old clothes or donated materials. So that's kind of like the background. So we were poor on the inside of the apartment, heavily persecuted on the outside. And during that time is when we were invited to come to a Christmas celebration.
Yeah. So a couple of things. Before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about the history of Ukraine, and some people refer to it as the Ukraine, but you told me, yeah, it's okay just to say
Right.
Ukraine. And before 1991, it was part of the Soviet Union, right?
That's right. I'm actually older than my country, which is kind of cool to say, I guess. I was born in 1987, so I have like an old Soviet birth certificate. And in 1991, that's when Ukraine, the state of the Soviet Union, became a country. And so it's been fun to be. I guess not very many people can say that they're older than their country.
And you were born in 1987, so you were there during the transition to when Ukraine became its own country, but things didn't change immediately. Obviously, tell us a little bit about what happened even after. The Soviet Union broke up, tear down this wall, Mr. Gorbachev. Yeah. We've heard that, and so some listening know that history pretty well. But so the country didn't turn on a dime and become free, and everything was great. What were the conditions like for your dad even after that?
Well, it was an interesting time because I was born just a year after Chernobyl, and Chernobyl happened just I want to say 30 miles away from Kiev. So
Wow.
There was that going on. And then the fall of the Soviet Union, there was just a lot of uncertainty in the air. And even though Christians, they were technically free to worship, but people don't change overnight. We're still looked down as just crazies. They looked at us like we believe in a God. We're crazy, and so it actually got worse for Christians. That's where during that time is when we only had so many pairs of shoes. We just didn't have much to work with. And my father, God bless him, it was a tough time for him. But God is faithful, and we were able to come to the United States, and what a blessing that was for us.
What was it that precipitated your move from Ukraine to the United States? It has something to do with mafias, and explain what that was like, what was going on.
It's interesting. Yeah, just 2 weeks before we moved to the United States, we had somebody knock on our door, and there was a girl from the neighborhood, my sister's friend, and she overheard a conversation of a local mafia talking about our family. They found out that we sold our apartment in Kiev, that we had some money, and so they wanted to kidnap one of the kids, and they wanted to demand ransom for one of the kids. And so, as you can imagine, my dad was pretty stressed out at that point, and we had to move in the middle of the night. We chartered a small bus, and we had a car in front of the bus as well. We had some bodyguards. We had 2 bodyguards. So we lived on the 5th floor of the apartment building, and we had 2 bodyguards inside the apartment, 2 bodyguards in the bus, and then 2 bodyguards transporting each child one by one through the old dark staircase of a Soviet staircase. So it was like intense. It was like a movie. 3 o'clock in the morning, we couldn't tell anyone that we were moving to the United States. They found out after we already moved to the United States from letters that we sent out. And so that was an intense time. It was like something from, I remember driving to the airport, and I just remember looking at my neighborhood, and everything was like slow motion. I just remember passing the school, the soccer field where I spent a lot of time, the playground. And I just remember thinking, I will probably never see this place ever again. And, over 20 years later, I haven't been back. So
wow. Yeah, do you intend to go back?
I want to.
Point? Yeah.
I'd love to.
Yeah, I'll bet.
It's I never had closure. I feel like I need to go back just to have closure, because I sometimes have dreams where I wake up and I'm in my apartment in Ukraine. It's not it's a nightmare. I think for like the first 10 years or so, I would have dreams that I woke up and I was back home, and I'm like, oh no, no, I don't want to be here. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I'm in the United States.
Because you knew of the oppression, obviously,
yes.
Because you were old enough. You were 9 years old.
Well, and the certain things linger. They don't just go away. Like, for example, scarcity mindset. A lot of times, like, it was hard for me to go like to all-you-can-eat places because I didn't know when to stop. I just wanted to eat because we grew up so poor.
Wow.
I tried to force myself not to overeat, because that's something that you have this mindset that it won't be there tomorrow, because that's what you've been conditioned to believe for 12 years. And so it took a long time to get out of it. And even to this day, I catch myself like, okay, Vladimir, let it go. Stop eating. This is a good cutoff time.
Yeah, stop buffeting your body. It's buffet, not buffet.
There you go.
So, yeah, you talked about, and we hadn't mentioned this before, but your family required a bus because you were one of 9 kids.
That's right. And my brother at that time already had a child, and he was married, so we all moved together.
My goodness.
Yeah, it was intense. It definitely, but coming to the United States, what was so special is that we had 2 different churches come together, 2 different denominations. It was like a Presbyterian and a Methodist coming together in Jesus' name, putting away their differences. Because in my culture, denominations usually fight with each other, but it was so special to see 2 churches coming together. And they funded our move. They put us up in a house. They paid our rent. They took us shopping. They educated us. It was this unconditional love. It was in the South. It was this Southern hospitality, I call it. We had strangers show up every day, would bring us food, take us shopping. I just remember Mom and Dad just in tears of how overwhelming that unconditional love was. Because a lot of times people think they have to go somewhere to like a third world country to help somebody. But back in their own country, they were helping this family. My mom had to do laundry by hand, and remember the first time she had a washer and dryer, she was just in tears. She was like, wow, all I have to do is just press a button. So it was special just to witness unconditional love, and love is contagious, and it spreads like wildfire.
That's a lesson to those of us who grew up in the United States who have had all of these things that you didn't have. And I think we need to remember every day, when we wake up, we need to be thankful for what God has given us.
Absolutely.
Number one, the day, the life that He's given us, whatever the list of blessings and benefits are. That's an endless list when you think about it. A washing machine, we take that for granted here. We take dishwashers for granted. We take air conditioning for granted. But that's just a wonderful reminder. So tell us about the Shoebox Experience, because that happened when you were still in Ukraine.
Yes, and so this was the middle of cold Ukrainian winter. We had to hop on the bus and then on the tram just to get to this place. And we were lightly dressed because we couldn't afford warm clothes. But it didn't matter because I was just so excited to get to this place. And I remember when we pulled up to the place, I was walking in with a girl from my class, and I just remember being confused because I knew this girl was not a Christian, and for some reason I assumed that this event was only for Christians, because in my country, we don't celebrate Christmas. They celebrate New Year's, kind of like Americans celebrate Christmas here. Old Man Winter comes on New Year's, like our version of Santa Claus. And so I thought that this was going to be like a Christian event. But to my surprise, this place was filled with people from all walks of life. In fact, there were probably, all of them were non-believers. And when we walked into this place, it's like we transitioned from this black and white Ukrainian winter, cold Ukrainian winter, to a room that was filled with love, kindness, so much color. And there was happy music, beautiful, welcoming smiles. But what was so special about this event is that they presented the gospel to us in so many different and unique and creative ways through singing, dancing, cartoons, movies, animations, flannel boards. It was just so visual. I remember that by the end of the evening, if you didn't understand what the gospel was all about, you weren't paying attention because they went above and beyond. It was so special. And then even if they stopped at that, it would have been enough because it was like a big birthday party for everyone. But then they brought out these beautiful and colorful shoe boxes. And I remember when I opened my shoebox, just so much color, just for a child to process. Because my country, everything's kind of like gray. There's not much color. Soviet Union, that's what number one people tell me when they go to Soviet Union. There's just not much color.
Bleak.
Yeah. And when I opened my shoebox, there was just so much color. Like, that was my first impression. Like, that's a lot of color to take in. And to this day, like the sound of the wrapping paper and the smells of soaps, like when I hear that, it brings me back to the box, because it was just, I've never experienced those things. And so I had my own yo-yo. I didn't have to make yo-yos out of Coca-Cola caps anymore. I had my own toothbrush. I didn't have to share a toothbrush. And my toothbrush was like a rock star toothbrush. It had like so much personality, so much color. I had my own Hot Wheel cars, and you have to play with my shoes pretending they were cars. I had this bar of soap that was like the whitest white I've ever seen. So squeaky clean, slick. The way it was designed smelled so good. I call it my whole spirit in a box, because it like sanctified the whole box for me. The whole box smelled like it. And I had school supplies. And growing up, we couldn't afford school supplies, and I was heavily ridiculed by my teacher because I was too embarrassed to tell her that we couldn't afford it. So I lied to her. I told her that I forgot it at home, and she would make me get up, my twin brother, in front of the whole class, and we had to walk around and beg for a pen and paper, and classmates would just roll their eyes like, "Oh, why can't you be responsible?" And so now I had my own school supplies, and they were from another country, and they were so special, so unique, so different. Everyone wanted what I had. And everyone always wants to know, like, Vladimir, what's that one special thing that you enjoyed most? And for a lot of people, it's different things. For my sister Nadia, she received a shoebox also, and she had a Barbie. And in our neighborhood, during the 90s, Barbies were very popular. Not very many people. In fact, there was only one girl in the neighborhood who had a Barbie, and she was not allowed to take it outside because she was afraid that it would get stolen, broken, or lost. And so what this girl would do, it's kind of comical thinking about it, she would get on the balcony. And it was like a sad scene from Romeo and Juliet. She would show this Barbie to all the little girls in the neighborhood, and they all just look up, and it was like a pope coming out on a balcony. They're all just like waiting, like to see this Barbie. And so when my sister got her Barbie, she made sure to arrange sleepovers for all the little girls with this Barbie. So every girl in the neighborhood got to take this Barbie home at least once. And to this day, when we moved to the United States, we gave this Barbie to another family, and that family gave it to another family. So the gifts go further than you think, and they bless more people than you think. So all that to say that my most memorable item was dental floss. And
tell it. And you're holding the dental floss.
Dental floss. And the reason why it was so memorable for me is because I licked it thinking it was candy, and I remember thinking, you guys have some crazy candy in America. Like, what kind of candy is this? And I got a lot of it together in a ball, and I popped it in my mouth like a mint, and my mouth was just so numb from all that mint. and there was a guy sitting across.
No, Vladimir, it's not a mint.
But I thought it was a unique candy. And across the room, there was a guy sitting there, and he was looking at me, and I could tell he was concerned. Oh. And he came over, and he tried to explain to me in his broken Russian that this is not what you think it is. And so he kind of like tried to show me that this is for your teeth, which confused me even more, because I remember thinking like, okay, I was fine with it just being some diet American candy, but now I'm confused. Like, how is this thing effective? Like, how are you supposed to brush your teeth with this string, right? I mean, toothbrush, very effective. But it wasn't until many years later when we finally moved to the United States. Kingsport, Tennessee, remember, the small town, we were at the first dentist appointment, and the guy went between the teeth when he was demonstrating. And I remember just sitting in the chair and like, wow, that's what that thing is.
So you didn't know it until that point?
No, I knew that it was for your teeth, but I just thought it was like you're supposed to brush your teeth, not go between your teeth. and probably would have saved me several cavities.
Well, so that's a note for anybody who puts a shoebox together. And by the way, I'm going to let Allison pop in here. I've got a couple of questions on the practical side of how this all works and how people can get involved. And then I'm going to come back to you because I've got some more questions about your story. But so if you're going to put dental floss in one of these shoe boxes, make sure you include instructions.
No, I think actually I always encourage people not to, because then you won't have another testimony, right? Another Vladimir. Let him figure it out.
That's right.
The worst thing can happen is get a little tummy ache. Right?
Yeah, well, that's right. Oh, also, the other thing, too, is you mentioned Tennessee. And again, before we started recording, I commented on how little your accent is just not very apparent. And you said it's because you have an East Tennessee accent. Can you do a little Ukrainian Tennessee for us real quick?
Yeah, well, in Tennessee, I always say when a Southern accent meets any accent in the world, the Southern accent wins every time. And so I just remember when I moved to the States, like, see if I get this right. They called me Vladimir. I'd say,
good.
Vladimir, boy, you ain't from around here. But it was fun, just the Southern hospitality, the South, the spirit of the South, like the Bible Belt. It was, I think, I'm so blessed that we moved in the best part of the country. For me, because I'm obviously biased because I grew up in the South, but I experienced Southern hospitality at its best, and it was a lot of fun.
And the buffets.
Buffets, that's right. I remember first time I walked into Walmart, that was a culture shock.
Oh, wow.
I remember thinking, "Wow, this is interesting."
And we're so used to that. Again, we take it for granted. The shelves are stocked.
I remember a buffet going in, and I remember thinking, like, they told me you can eat whatever you want. I'm like, it's a trick. Don't fall for it, guys.
The mafia is going to get
you. That's not true. They're like, no, seriously, you can eat whatever you want. I'm like, no way. So it was a good culture shock.
That's great. Well, Allison, tell us a little bit about how Operation Christmas Child works and, how people can get involved, because there are a lot of different ways.
Yeah. So, the project's been going on since 1993, and there's been more than 188 million children who've received shoe boxes. This year, National Collection Week is November 15th through 22nd. So those are some dates to keep in mind. During that week, churches will be open as drop-off locations all around the country to receive your boxes. To pack a box, you first just choose a shoebox or a similar box of a similar size and choose if you want to pack it for a boy or a girl and the age range, which would be 2 to 4, 5 to 9, or 10 to 14. And then you fill it with kind of, as we talked about, school supplies, hygiene items, and toys. We kind of encourage like a wow item or a bigger, more exciting toy.
Dental floss.
That's right. Got to have dental floss.
Yeah.
But that doesn't take up too much space.
Right.
So
2 dental flosses then.
It's all 2 in 1, candy and floss.
I love doing soccer balls and Barbies like he talked about. And then once you fill it, then if you go online to SamaritansPurse.org/OCC, you can print out a label and make your $9 donation online. And then with those labels too, you can even find out where your box went. So I've been able to see, in past years where mine have gone. And be sure in the boxes to include a picture of your family and a note. I've always enjoyed doing that with my family, and it makes it real personal for them. And then during National Collection Week, you turn it in. And another area that has really grown over the last years is building a shoebox online. So if you're not able to put one together yourself, you can just still go to the same website and it'll take you through how to build a shoebox online. And the cool thing is many of those online boxes go to hard-to-reach areas that are specifically designed for that. So that's a neat opportunity.
So one of the questions that I had, Vladimir, as I was getting prepared for this conversation was, and maybe, Allison, you can answer this, is you would think that Ukraine would be a hard country to get into, but it sounds like the Soviet Union was already out of the picture to some extent by that time. But talk about some of the hard-to-reach countries. Obviously, we don't want to share any secrets for how you get into some of those countries, but explain how that works and how, and maybe some of the stories that have come out of there.
The ministry is working in a lot of hard-to-reach areas, in Africa and in the Pacific Islands. And they've been able to translate their a greatest gift booklet that goes with each box into the 88 different languages. And so it's been amazing as I've been involved in the ministry to hear some of the stories of some of these hard to reach areas where these boxes open the door and provide a way to do ministry in areas that might not otherwise be able to have a ministry like that. And in the Pacific Islands, which is a big initiative in the past few years, the ministry would like to reach 500,000 children and over 1,000 Pacific Islands by 2023.
Wow. Some big goals. You've already reached some huge goals over the years. I mean, you just mentioned how many millions of kids have been reached. And look at this guy right here, sitting
That's
here
right.
with
one of 188 million.
This is
children.
one story, and again, I've had the privilege of being able to hear some other stories, but these, God is changing the world through the work of Operation Christmas Child. It's just amazing.
And another thing to know is the discipleship program that we have called The Greatest Journey. Millions of children have been able to go through a 12-lesson discipleship program where they learn more about how to have a relationship with Jesus and how to share Jesus with their friends and family members. And it is so cool to see how, this is not just giving a box, but then and just one time presenting the gospel, but also follow up and making sure the kids are growing in their faith. And there's been numerous churches all over the world planted through these distribution events and the Greatest Journey discipleship classes. One
of the neat things about Operation Christmas Child also is that there are so many different ways you can get involved. If you are somebody if your church is not involved, you can get your church involved, obviously, right? But you can do it as an individual. You can pack your own shoebox. You can go to SamaritansPurse.org/OCC and do an online, put a box together online. So there are so many different ways that you can do that. And we'll repeat a little bit of that information toward the end here just to make sure. Go get a pencil so you can write that down. Vladimir, I want to get back to you because you've got an interesting story. We could probably spend another half an hour talking about how your family ended up getting over here, how they ended up where they did in the South. And you can certainly mention any of that you think is important. But talk about what you have been doing in terms of work. You started working for the Billy Graham organization. So tell us a little bit about that story.
Yes, well, the way I got connected, because some people always they ask me, like, Vladimir, how did you get reconnected with Operation Christmas Child? Well, in 5 years ago, I applied for a job. I went through the Billy Graham Library in Charlotte. My twin brother moved to Charlotte, and I was impressed with, wow, this man, just how he crossed the finish line. And so anyway, I went on the website and applied for a web design job. And they flew me in for an interview, and I was during one of the interviews, they asked me if I had any prior involvement with Billy Graham Evangelistic Association.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I told them about my father, that my father volunteered at the Crusades, but somehow I knew that these shoeboxes were connected with Billy Graham. Now I know that Samaritan's Purse is a sister organization of the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. And so I just mentioned to them, I was like, hey, I got a shoebox when I was 9 years old. And I thought it was like, Boy Scouts of America, you get an Eagle Scout, kind of. I thought when you a certain age you get a shoebox and a Bible. I didn't think it was just in the third world country, old other countries. And they were like, what, you receive a shoebox? I'm like, yeah, everyone gets a shoebox, right? They're like, nope, that's not. And so they connected me with Samaritan's Purse. And once I learned what it's all about, that it's all about evangelism, discipleship, and multiplication, how intentional it is. And these shoeboxes, they don't just touch children's lives, but I always say, if you want to show love to me, show love to my children. I have two boys, 5 and 8-year-old. And when children receive these shoeboxes, not only do the children get this beautiful gift, but the parents are blessed by it, and it has a huge ripple effect. And these boxes, they're like boxes full of light. And when light enters darkness, darkness has to flee, because the gospel comes with these shoeboxes. That's why I'm so excited about how intentional it is. We're after the children, the next generation. And it's
so
powerful.
Important, so
very
important.
Powerful.
So you worked for the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. You were a web designer
for a couple of years.
And tell us about a really important project that you were privileged to work on.
I was so my last couple of weeks at Billy Graham was happened to be when Billy Graham passed away, Mr. Graham, and it was so. I was so fortunate to witness him cross the finish line. I got to work on the memorial website, and it was something. I was just thanking God that I got to be there during that last hour, so to speak. It was something I'll never forget, and so that was super special for me that I got to work on his website, a Shoebox recipient. I got to work on Billy Graham's memorial website, his finish line. So it's kind of like a full circle story, and sometimes it's hard to make it up that this really did happen. And I got to see the presidents come in, and it was super special.
Wow. So then how'd you end up, well, you don't work full time for Operation Christmas
No.
Child. Tell us about how that works, what you do, your day job.
Yeah,
shall I say.
well, I have I have a software company that I started with my brother 3 years ago, but which enables me to travel more, and I want to work share my story. If me sharing my story will help people pack more shoe boxes so they can hear the gospel, I'll go anywhere and I'll share my story anywhere. So
I guarantee you it's going to, because there are a lot of people who are listening right now who I think have been really motivated to get involved. If you've not been involved in putting a shoebox together, just want to encourage you to do it. Just think about the impact that it has had on Vladimir's life and the millions of other children over the years. It costs some money. You have to invest some money to buy the items, to pay for the shipping, that kind of thing. But it's a small price to pay for the potential end result. And again, sitting across from Vladimir here with his dental floss, and it just has an amazing impact. So, again, Allison, thank you for being here. Vladimir, thank you for volunteering your time, taking away from your business and the important work that you're doing. Once again, you can go to SamaritansPurse.org/OCC. That's SamaritansPurse.org/OCC, where you can get all the information you need. Vladimir, any last words, any final encouragement for our listeners?
I just want, when you pack your shoe boxes, just pray for them. Prayer is what makes it all work. And when you pray over anything in Jesus' name, it changes frequencies. It becomes like a box full of love.
That's amazing. Well, again, thank you both for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For Bot Radio Network, this is Eben Fowler. Thanks for listening, and pack a shoebox.